So we'll start by setting a positive motivation. So we try to develop these minds of confidence and bodhicitta, mind of confidence in the reliability and repeatability of the path, in the Buddha's infallible wisdom contained in that path. And then bodhicitta wanting to engage in that path, to get the result of that path, not only for one's own benefit, but principally for the benefit of every sentient being. Recognizing that all of the disadvantages of cyclic existence that we ourselves are experiencing are applicable to every other sentient being. So every sentient being must also be free of suffering, must also have perfect happiness. And even taking responsibility, incredibly brave attitude of the bodhisattvas. I myself alone will bring all sentient beings to enlightenment. And recognizing that to make that a reality, we ourselves must first achieve enlightenment. Only then do we have the ability to really actualize that motivation. We strongly create the motivation of confidence, refuge, and bodhicitta. All right. So we will finish today the first topic of Lamrim Year on proper reliance. And so we'll cover days 61 through 63. Is that accurate? Yes. Days 61 through 63 today. So it could be, unless there are a number of questions, I don't know, it might be a little bit of a shorter, I don't know if it'll take the full hour or not to cover those three. Probably best to start the next topic on its own class. But did anyone have a question from before, prior material, or anything that's been kicking around? All right, so day 61. Day 61 is where the quote is, "There is no deity other than the guru." So we've talked about how, we're kind of, there's many kind of English words that we're sort of stuck with, and deity is one translation that kind of just have to deal with. It's an English way of talking about Yedam, or meditational deity. Um, so, and here the point we've talked, since we're at the end of this now, we've probably talked about all of these points, coming from them from other angles. And so this is something that we've addressed to some degree, thinking about Dharmakaya mind. But here, to me, what sort of stood out is that this unique angle, which is what, that's kind of what analytical meditation is all about. It's not just finding one way of thinking about something or one concept. It's about approaching the same concept from many different points of view, many different converging lines of analysis, lines of reasoning. But what seemed to be a little bit of a different twist on this idea here is talking about how, which is, logical and reasonable. It's just sort of being pointed out more directly that when we talk about Dharmakaya mind, it isn't like there's one kind of Dharmakaya mind that's that's kind of just the more ordinary. If there is an ordinary way of achieving enlightenment, like what I mean is, we talk about just people on earth being able to achieve enlightenment, just practitioners in general. They can achieve enlightenment, and they talk about, just people who just do that as relatively ordinary practitioners. Um, and then in Buddhism, you also have the idea of the sort of celestial Buddhas, the meditational deities, Chenrezig, Tara, um, these different, all of these different forms that we meditate on. And, these are also understood there's different ways of thinking about that, but, there are different stories, different kind of backstories, and about the different, Tara was said to be a female practitioner who was kind of told, oh, well, you should spend your life praying to be reborn as a male so that, you could achieve enlightenment easier. And she was like, no, thank you. I will devote myself to achieving enlightenment as a female, and embodying that kind of energy, that kind of sort of the energy of the mother, that sort of nourishing, protective, powerful, like when a mother's child is threatened, that kind of incredibly special, powerful energy. And so, there are stories that present her as a practitioner, and like that for other. So, but then of course, then we think of them as sort of celestial, and then, and of course, it's also important to recognize that it isn't that there's like there's like one concretized Tara like floating out there in space, that kind of thing. That Dharmakaya mind is still different, that it's a manifestation of Dharmakaya mind. But in a way, what Lama Zopa is trying to help us see is, or a faulty way of thinking that he's trying to prevent us from slipping into, is this idea where we might think of, yes, okay, there's, kind of one type of enlightenment that is open to people, and then there was some like other sort of special thing that happened, and that's why we have celestial, you know meditational deities, and he's saying that the essential point is to understand that all the Buddhas are of one taste in the Dharmakaya. The Dharmakaya is the absolute guru, and this is all the Buddhas. This is the very heart of Guru Yoga practice. Without understanding this, there's no way to practice Guru Yoga comfortably. Even if we do the visualizations, it won't be completely satisfactory because we'll be unclear as to how a Buddha is the embodiment of the Guru and the Guru is the embodiment of a Buddha. However, it'll be extremely clear if we understand the very heart of Guru Yoga, that the Guru is a Buddha and the Buddha is the Guru. So to really just hit home that it doesn't matter what kind of form that we think of, whether we think of a meditational deity or whether we think of our flesh and blood teacher in front of us, that all enlightened manifestations are manifestations of the Dharmakaya, and they're just different forms that are suitable for different kinds of practitioners. The Sambhogakaya aspect is suitable for some practitioners, but for practitioners like us, we have no choice but to relate to the kind of flesh and blood aspect, the Nirmanakaya aspect of enlightened mind because of our karma. It's our karmic obscurations, our karmic, obscurations is probably the best. And until we purify our karmic obscurations, that's all that's open to us. And so, out of their great kindness, that's how Dharmakaya mind, manifests. That's how previously enlightened minds manifest, is for our benefit in that aspect. But that there aren't like different kinds of enlightened beings in different, there's just skillful means is kind of what they would say, that there's just, Kodo. Oh, sorry. You raised your hand.
No, I have a question, but please finish.
Oh, no, I don't know that I was, but yeah, it's just, I would just say to think of it as skillful means in the sense that enlightened mind will manifest in any way that it's possible to reach sentient beings. And because we only can access a limited range of that, all of that reality, then they will also manifest there.
So now I have a question. I'm seeing the word Dharmakaya in many classes, and it seems to be used in different ways. And that's where I'm asking the question is, here or everywhere, is it the teachings and the reality of the reality that the teachings are trying to get us to experience? Is that what Dharmakaya is? Or what is it? Thank you.
I think when Venerable Pema was, she expressed that it's the inexpressible, that Dharmakaya represents sort of the inexpressible. So, hello. So that kind of gets me off the hook because it's inexpressible. But it's, and we were also going, into less kind of technical detail because she was also going into, the emptiness of the Dharmakaya. And, so there's the different, you can differentiate the bodies of a Buddha in more than 3 divisions. You can talk about, but we're just kind of, Lamrim Year isn't really going into that kind of really technical, where you're looking at like the nature truth body and the wisdom truth body, and you're not going into that kind of level of detail. So the Nirmanakaya, so Dharmakaya is kind of just um, the most primordial essence of enlightened mind. And then Sambhogakaya is is emanating from that in a still very subtle way that is only accessible to highly realized beings. And then Nirmanakaya is the coarsest kind of emanation of Dharmakaya, emanation of Dharmakaya, where that kind of emanation is what appears in the flesh and blood kind of form. But it could also appear. It's hard. I would guess that if it appears in the hell realm or the spirit realm or the hungry or the animal realm, of course definitely the animal realm, but because the other realms are kind of more energetic in nature than animal or human, the hell realm, the spirit realm. So the god realms are kind of very energetic, but I would imagine that you would still talk about emanations of Dharmakaya in all of those, also as the Nirmanakaya aspect of enlightened mind, because the beings there are completely ordinary. They're not really. Sambhogakaya is accessible only in high states of meditative absorption with a mind that is like on the bodhisattva grounds. Um, so all of those emanations would be Nirmanakaya. So yeah, I mean Dharmakaya, it's it's the inexpressible, it's the kind of beyond conceptuality, because it's mind directly absorbed in a non-dual concentration on emptiness, free even from the subtle stains, the subtle imprints of the cognitive the obscurations to omniscience, the obscurations to knowledge. Um, so, but that experience of mind absorbed in that kind of concentration is not something that can be expressed.
Venerable, I don't mean to diverge too far from the original study, but I think Kodo's question is really important, and I take it one step further because I don't understand what Svabhavakaya is, and I know that's one of the kayas. I wonder why you go beyond Dharmakaya to have another kaya.
Yeah, it's just you can talk about it's kind of just a technical, it's almost just like a tech, it's because Buddha, I mean Tibetan Buddhism, they're really fond of just really exacting detail, you know. Um so it isn't like truly, it's really just a separate way of talking about the Dharmakaya. It's a way of, you can talk about the mind that is free from the obscurations, even the subtle, and then you can talk about the emptiness of that mind. It's the way it ultimately it's just a way of helping us to not concretize even a fully enlightened being, to recognize that even when mind is free of all of the obscurations, that mind is also still empty of inherent existence. It's still empty of. So it's really just a way of helping us to think appropriately about enlightenment, to remind us that even the mind of an enlightened being it's not like the mind, it's not like you uncover the obscurations and then you find something that is, existing from its own side, that is, that you've uncovered this, like, oh, aha, I've now found the soul, I've now found like this thing that truly independently, inherently, solidly exists because I've removed the obscurations, because I've that mind. Once you've done that, we still have to think of that mind, we still have to understand that mind as completely free of existing in that concretized way. So it's not like there's it's not like that it has like different abilities, or like Nirmanakaya and Sambhogakaya, they're accessible to different, like they function differently. It's a way of talking about enlightened mind kind of functioning in qualitatively different ways. But talking about the Dharmakaya in two different ways is really just to help us not cling to the idea of enlightenment as a findable essence, in a way. I mean, that's how I understand it.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
So then he says, with this recognition of what the guru is, with this understanding of the absolute guru, it is easy to relate to all the Buddhas of the 10 directions, no matter how many different external aspects there are, male, female, 2 arms, 1,000 arms. They are all manifestations of the guru, and the guru is all those Buddhas. Okay. So then day 62, Lama Zopa is kind of making it clear that this, even though it's the first meditation on the path, he describes it as the hardest realization to have in the Lamrim. And because the quote is, no matter how many years or even lifetimes it takes, we have got to face the hardships involved in generating the realization of Guru devotion. He says, because Guru devotion is the most difficult realization to achieve, we need to put a lot of effort into it. So, and this is still broadly true of all of the Lamrim meditations, in the sense that what he's talking about here is that we need to not think that we can have realizations of any of these topics within some kind of short period of time. To think, oh yeah, well, in 5 years, definitely I will have realized the Lamrim, or, in 10 years or 20 years. And to get comfortable with the idea that these realizations require repetition, which is kind of, the purpose of Lamrim Year. He's giving us one contemplation for every, day of a full year. And then he's also, Lama Zopa has also said that in general, his recommendation is to approach the study of the Lamrim in kind of these monthly chunks. That's kind of his advice. And that's really even taking into account the Western mind, which is kind of not so fond of repetition. We crave um, new stimulus in our um, and what Venerable Urbina was saying over the weekend too is applicable. Of course, everything she says is always applicable, uh, but most recently she was saying, that the purpose of analytical meditations is not to cling to a meditative experience. Um, it's to trust in the process of the repetition, to train the mind, which is, I always think of meditate, trying to become familiar with these topics in the same way that I think about health, physical health, which is that you don't expect that eating well or exercising has a dramatic impact in one day, um, you know, and it isn't something that you really can stop. You have to every single day, you have to be mindful of your exercise and your diet, and you have to maintain that over the course of your entire life. It isn't something that you do for a little while and then you can just never do again. Um, Now, of course, when we achieve enlightenment, then that's the path of no more learning that we can stop. But until then, it's just sort of what we do that day, just like we eat and we move and we eat, and we try to do that mindfully and trying to become familiar with these topics is just that's what that day is supposed to be about. And it's not a project. It's just that it's today is Monday, and so I'm going to eat and I'm going to move, and tomorrow's Tuesday, and so I'm going to eat and I'm going to move. So we just integrate Lamrim study because we are alive, and that's our job. That's the goal. Um, so he's saying, that we really have to think about it as, in that way, that it's not. Um, He says we shouldn't be satisfied by thinking about just a few points once or twice. We must reflect on the points over and over again using quotations and reasoning until we generate the realization. If our Guru devotion is well established through logical reasoning, we'll be able to transform our mind into the devotion that sees the Guru as the Buddha. Um, and then he talks, and you all probably are familiar with the process of analytical meditation, but he touches on that. Some people maybe on YouTube might not know it as well. Where analytical meditation, we sometimes talk about the two broad categories of meditation, one being analytical and the other being stabilizing. And we talk about how what distinguishes analytical meditation is that there is some degree of intentional discursiveness in the mind, meaning that we are following chains of logic, chains of argumentation, reasoning, and so the mind is active, the mind is engaged in words and concepts and ideas. But the only purpose of that is to arrive at a conclusion, to arrive at an insight. And um, once we've done that, once, internally, once in that session of meditation, we feel confident, we feel like there is a felt experience of that insight. Now, of course, over the course of decades, that the depth and clarity of that insight certainly will change. It's not to say that the very first time that we do it, whatever we settle on as the insight is the actual insight. That certainly changes over time, but best we can do is within that session get to a point where there is of some feeling of the truth of what we are investigating, um, the truth of impermanence, the truth of karma, whatever it might be. And then once that has arisen in the mind, we stop the analysis. We stop engaging in the lines of argumentation, the lines of reasoning, and we rest the mind in that insight for the remainder of that session. However, it could just be a couple of more minutes, what have you. And then, of course, if, as it likely will happen, we go off from that stabilizing insight because of a distraction, then we may need to go back to thinking about the topic. We may need to go back to picking up again some of those lines of reasoning because that felt sense is just not present in the mind and there's nothing to hold on to anymore. And then that argumentation, that reasoning will generate that insight again, and then again we hold on to it for as long as we can. And also, as the distractions subside over time, then sometimes we can just sort of move right back into, like, the mind did stray from the insight, but the insight is still like pretty much there, and we just shift back into the insight, and then we just hold it again. So it isn't true to say that analytical meditations don't have a stabilizing aspect. A stabilizing meditation, though, doesn't have an analytical aspect. So that's true. Like if you're just meditating on the physical sensation of the breath, then you're just staying with a sensation. You never need to use thoughts, or thoughts will still arise, but those are distractions. They're not intentionally part of your session of meditation. But an analytical meditation, toward the end, you're meant, once you've given rise to the insight, you're meant to just hold that insight. So because he says that we then stabilize our devotion by doing fixed or single pointed meditation on our feeling that the Guru is a Buddha. In this way, we preserve the experience of devotion. We train again and again with analytical and then fixed. So the analytical gives rise to this, feeling, and then we hold the feeling, and then so it's like that. And it's like that with any analytical, any Lamrim meditation follows the same pattern. He says, if possible, we should do Guru devotion meditation every morning when we meditate on Lamrim, then try to continue the experience during the rest of the day. This is the best way to ensure quick and stable development of the Guru devotion realization. So that would be something like, if you're using the foundation of all good qualities, let's say, as your kind of glance meditation, you might recite that every day. And here Lama Zopa is saying, this piece of advice is saying, because I said before that he kind of advises that we focus month by month. here he's kind of saying that, well, yes, you might have a month where, but that, when he says that, he's talking kind of about all of your sessions of meditation being on that same topic and coming up with like different. So if you meditate, say, twice a day, that would be 60 different meditations, and the topic, so you might come up with 10 different ways of dividing up the topic, and you might do each one 3 times. um, you know um, that that for that, um, or whatever you would do each one, yeah, whatever the math is. So you would do 60 different meditations, but that'd be 10 different ways of talking about the topic as a whole. But then he's saying, so you would have a month where guru devotion was like that, and all of the meditations that month were on that. But he's also saying, every morning, because in the foundation of all good qualities, the first verse is that is about guru devotion. Then you would do maybe just a quick meditation every single morning, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then if that month was on precious human rebirth or whatever, then you would just maybe do a 10-minute meditation on guru devotion, and then you would do your 2 normal 20-minute meditations on precious human rebirth, or you might do like a 7-minute. So it's just sort of like a refresher, like every single day doing maybe 5, 7, 10 minutes. Not, and maybe you could, I mean, here he's really talking about the specific aspect of guru devotion, which is the heart of it, seeing the guru as the Buddha. So, that would be like remembering their kindness and so on, focusing on their good qualities, to stop the critical mind, the mind of finding fault and so on. But also he's talking about, the scriptural citations and so you could pick different scriptural, like in where we said it, that the Buddha said, when that I will appear as teachers in future. So you could just take that one sentence, and do a 5-minute meditation where the Buddha, I have confidence in the Buddha, and the Buddha said, in the future, in difficult times, the way that I will manifest is as the guru. So you could just do it like that. Any questions, thoughts? Okay. So then the last contemplation, day 63, Lama Zopa says our own experiences answer any questions we might have about the importance of guru devotion. He says the actual proof of how experiences and realizations of the path to enlightenment depend on the root of strong guru devotion comes when we practice. We can clearly see the difference in our everyday life between times when we are correctly devoting ourselves to the Guru with thought and action, and times when we're not. When our Guru devotion is strong, our experiences of whatever we are meditating on is strong. We find it easy to meditate, to feel the meditations, because we're continuously receiving blessings. Any meditation we do is effective, and any prayer we do moves our mind and brings understanding. So this is again that, in a way, that interdependent relationship between oneself and enlightened mind, where by training in Guru devotion, we open ourselves up, we make ourselves more receptive to the blessings of enlightened mind, um, and just kind of all of the ways that, the things that we've talked about before in terms of the power of having that confidence of being, being led to enlightenment, being actually feeling as though I'm not just on my own. I'm not just, having to go to the library and figure it out. I'm actually, I'm under the, I'm under the care of enlightened beings. I am actively being led to my own enlightenment due to my relationship with the Guru. Um, and how that, kind of, he says that brings so much joy to the mind, that brings so much lightness to the mind, that we just hop on the meditation cushion rather than thinking of it as a chore, or thinking, because we think this is how my Guru is taking me to enlightenment, is by showing me what to meditate on, how to meditate on it. um, just like, if just like with anything, if you wanted to be a photographer and you found the best photographer in the entire world, and they said, come live in my studio and I will teach you everything, how extraordinary that is. So it's the same kind of thing, except what we've decided we want to do is achieve enlightenment, and we found someone who is bringing us to that enlightenment due to their, they're having done it already, and they're just showing us the path. They're revealing that to us. So how incredibly fortunate we are to have that in our lives. And how that kind of creates the ground for the realizations. And then, of course, the sort of twin, yeah, Coda.
Please finish.
No, he also, he talks about the accumulation of merit and the purification, which again, we've touched upon how we, by just through the virtue of correctly relating, we are, one of the psychological, or I don't know, metaphysical ways that that's also operating is because of the incredible karmic power of the Guru, that we are purifying any past mistakes by relating correctly, and we're accumulating vast stores of positive energy, positive momentum. And so that's those two accumulations of purification, and then it's also speeding us toward, really removing obstacles to realizing topics, meditative topics in the mind.
So I'm still standing out in front of that bakery without any money, and I can't get that delicious fresh bread. I don't have a specific personal guru, but since we, for the last 2 weeks or so, well, for years, I have been loving and have my photographs of the Dalai Lama, but for the last 2 weeks, haven't like totally been using him as my guru to practice devotion, but I have. Not like fully, but until I find a guru, can I do that? Can I use the Dalai Lama or just Shakyamuni Buddha as my devotional figure that I practice, so that when I do get a human, it's like I'm already ready?
Yeah, well, so of course we don't want to, we want to think of it because again, like I said, it transfers, because like what we were talking about before, when we see every manifestation of the guru as the absolute guru, then um, any emanation of Dharmakaya is equally valid. Um, and by training in one, we're training in all. And so, um, any thoughts or questions? That is the last contemplation on the topic. So yeah, I would say maybe it's interesting to, because he's saying, to rely on our own experience. Um, so to just maybe start experimenting with that, with again, with His Holiness, or um, Shakyamuni Buddha, and um, I mean, maybe I don't know if His Holiness would be better, because we don't really have any qualms, any doubt that the Buddha is the Buddha, um, you know, but it, at least with His Holiness, or so maybe, something to think about. Um, but it doesn't have to be His Holiness. It could be the Karmapa, or it could be Thich Nhat Hanh, or I mean, it doesn't have to be His Holiness, but maybe like a person rather than, um, maybe that would be. Um, but if we had, that also just depends. That also implies that a person that we've even gotten to that point, where we can identify, oh, this is someone that um, I'm able to start thinking about in that way, and that might not be true for us today, right now. Um, so maybe just, yeah, to think about. Um, if we haven't, I'm just kind of thinking out loud and trying to puzzling through it. Because I guess, is it is it true? I think that for us, um, we probably, on some level, of course, I think we accept the idea of enlightenment. Um, but do we accept it like completely? Do we accept it? Because if we did, then would we do anything other than practice? I mean, and I don't do, I mean, and I'm not saying that this is like you and not me. I'm just saying that, like, most ordinary people, um, we have some confidence in the idea of enlightenment, but do we really think it's something 100% that we ourselves can accomplish, and that it has been accomplished? Or do we still have some doubt that it's even a thing? And so, the Buddha was a historical figure, and do we have complete unshakable confidence that enlightenment is something that he achieved. And if we do, then, and so thinking about that is maybe the place to start. And then if we really can say that honestly, that we think that that's true, then we can relate to him as a teacher, and not just sort of like the Buddha, like not just sort of this abstract sort of celestial thing, but as the revealer of that knowledge, um, and focus on generating devotion to the person who revealed that to us, in that kind of historical way, who set kind of everything in motion. Um, and then, if we subsequently can get to the point where there is a more recent um, kind of person, then we can also work with that up until we're able to really think about it in terms of a personal relationship. So I think there's different levels to it. Um, and Venerable Pema, I mean, if you wanted to attend, yeah, I think that's a good, I mean, I think she kind of, when Aaron kind of asked, I think she might have said, Shakyamuni or His Holiness, or I think she kind of answered it that way too. Um, but it's always good to get other points of view.
I think part of what is also confidence building for any student is the fact that there's a lineage, the teachings have been brought down in a very specific order. Just listening to you this evening, I feel confident that what you're speaking about is based on the teachings truthfully and concisely. So those are also things that that help to create the base for devotion to the Dharma, and specifically to a guru. So, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, thinking, because like the main thing that the Buddha really did was wisdom realizing emptiness. It wasn't, I mean, there were certain things that distinguish his view of karma, but like karma isn't a new concept. He disagreed with some of the, because like the view of karma kind of gave rise to the caste system, in the sense that it was sort of thought of as a very sort of immutable and fixed kind of a thing, where like, oh well, that's just how you were born, like that's your station. And then, but it was like, no, I mean, karma is a thing, but it's dynamic, it's changing moment by moment, it's based on causes and conditions. So a person, you can't know anything about a person just based on what things were like at the moment of their birth. So he totally disagreed with the caste system. So there were things that he disagreed with, but as Venerable, like calm abiding isn't something that he invented. Um, that existed, prior to. Um, so, but the real insight that he had is that nothing exists in the way that it appears, and that things don't have fixed, concretized. And even 2,600 years later, he's still the only person really that had that insight. I mean, none of the other religious traditions agree with him. They all think that something that we're reducible to an essence, that we're reducible to a findable, fixed. Um, so in a way, it's kind of like, oh, it's easy to have confidence in like everything else that Einstein said, when you think about how he was the first person to like puzzle out, special relativity. But he did other things too, but all of the other things we have confidence in because of his like unique, extraordinary genius. And Buddha just had, just due to the force of all of his lifetimes of training, and he had a particular spiritual kind of unique genius. Um, and if we really think about that, that can kind of unlock, um, and also, just putting the teachings into practice in general too. Um, but that was really the specific contribution that no other person has ever had. Yeah, Coda.
So 61 days, 63 days guru devotion. Okay, that's day 63. So should we be using, if we're gonna, if somebody here or whoever has their own guru, or we're using the Dalai Lama or Shakyamuni, should we be using Chopa, Lama Chopa's guru devotion prayer style, or what should we be developing? What should we follow? Thank you.
So to do the Lama Chopa, the Guru Puja, that's a very common approach. It is a pretty advanced approach, um, to decide that. I mean, it's true for many people. The Guru Puja is kind of how they hang their practice together. It's kind of they start, and it can last the whole day. It doesn't have to be, because when we do the Guru Puja like together, it lasts 90 minutes, because you're just kind of going through it very quickly, relatively quickly. But you can stop. You can stop and do the different contemplations, and you can do more of one or less of another, or it doesn't have to be exactly the same experience every time, because again, there is the sort of Lamrim aspect to it. So that's an amazing way to do it. It is I would say, maybe a more advanced way to do it. Um, there in there's an upcoming Discovering Buddhism module. I believe it might be the next, because we're doing refuge right now. Establishing a daily practice is the next one. I think. I think that's true. And in that, Lama Zopa kind of gives a sort of a simplified way of also hanging your practice together. And that whole module is going to be about talking about that more simplified way of doing it. Yeah. And then, as I said, the foundation of all good qualities is also like, an option where, um, you know, but I wouldn't discourage anyone from looking at, the Guru Puja as an option. It's a beautiful practice, and many practitioners do use that to fit all of the pieces, because it has purification. I mean, it has all of the pieces in it. And then you just stop and you do a longer, you don't just run through it in 90 minutes. You actually do that meditation when you get to that. Um, and it has, if you've taken bodhisattva vows or tanya, that if you haven't taken them, then you skip those sections. But it also, for people who have taken them, because it is, like I said, technically it is an advanced practice. It is meant really, it's really meant for tantric practitioners, to be honest. It's an advanced practice. So, but as I said, in establishing a daily practice, there is there's a text that Lama Zopa created to make an easier version of that. That's also a really wonderful practice. And then there's transforming a suffering life into happiness. That's a wonderful practice too. kind of like as a morning practice. There's that text that also has Lamrim, and so okay. So we are just out of time. Any final thoughts or questions? All right, so we'll dedicate. So recollect your motivation and think that you engaged with the material in order to actualize that motivation, which has created positive energy in the mind, and think that you offer that positive energy for the benefit of all kind mother sentient beings without exception, visualizing strongly that it ripens in incredibly vast beneficial ways, creating the causes and conditions, inner and outer, for sentient beings to practice and achieve enlightenment. I think that they also create the conditions for oneself to achieve enlightenment in order to actualize our bodhicitta motivation, to give us the ability to lead sentient beings to enlightenment. Try to visualize strongly it ripening in those ways. All right. Well, thanks for coming. Have a good night, and we'll start with the next topic on precious human rebirth on Thursday.